Today's going to be one of those triple coffee days. Today I want to show you a slightly different method for making salted caramel buttercream. So first the caramel. Measure out 200 grams of sugar, and we're going to melt this into a caramel. This is the first stage where you can start controlling the intensity of the flavor of the caramel. So if you want a much lighter caramel flavor, you can melt this into a lighter caramel, or you can melt it into a darker caramel for more complex flavors and bitter notes. Got a nice caramel here, so I'm just going to pour this out. And we're going to let this cool completely. So it's now cooled, and you can crack it very easily. What I'm going to do with this is shove it in the food processor until it's a fine powder. An alternative to that is stuffing it in a plastic bag and hitting it with a hammer. So we're now ready to make our buttercream. 90 grams of egg whites. I'm just using stuff from a carton for no real reason, aside from the fact that I can. An 1/8 teaspoon of cream of tartar. 3 grams of salt. Sift in 175 grams of powdered caramel. Your mixture should look like this. Brown sludge. Next, in the name of efficiency, we're going to fill up the same pot we used to make the caramel with water, and that will serve as our double boiler. That'll clean the inside of the pot while we heat up the egg white mixture. Now that the water in my pot's come to a simmer, I'm going to stir the mixture until it comes to at least 165 Fahrenheit. You can go a little bit higher than 165. You can go up to about 185. You may have to alter the amount of butter that you add to the recipe. So the mixture has reached about 170. I'm going to whip it up until it reaches stiffness. This is a salted caramel meringue. Watch this. Caramelized caramel meringue. Now that the meringue's whipped up, I'm going to add 230 grams of unsalted butter at room temperature, 1 tablespoon at a time. This is salted caramel Swiss buttercream without adding caramel sauce. It's optional, but you can add about half a teaspoon of vanilla extract, just to add a little bit of flavor depth. Unlike the usual way for making salted caramel buttercream, this stuff gets its caramel flavor directly from the sugar, so you're not going to impact the texture by adding enough salted caramel sauce to the buttercream in order to get the best flavor. There we go. One of the advantages to this technique, or to this method, is that you can make more direct alterations by the recipe, to the recipe, because everything is contained within the egg white mixture, and you don't have an outside source that has its own salt content, vanilla content, sugar content. So it makes more sense to me that this method is more adaptable to being altered and perfected. This recipe doesn't make a ton of frosting, but you can double it if you want to make something more than like a 6-inch cake. And you can always alter the salt content. So there are a couple different ways you can alter the recipe to suit your need. If it doesn't have a strong enough caramel flavor, you can either increase the amount of powdered caramel that you use. You can increase the extent of caramelization of the of the powdered caramel when you're making it. And you can also add salted caramel sauce to this. The advantage is that you won't have to add quite as much to achieve the same flavor. And that, I think, is pretty cool. It's stable, it's light, it's melt in your mouthy. It's everything that I could want from a Swiss buttercream in terms of texture. In addition to buttercreams, it also, as you saw before, this method makes a salted caramel meringue itself. And that's something you could add gelatin to make marshmallows, or you can use it in and of itself. Salted caramel meringue sounds like a great component for pastries, for meringue pies. A lot of recipes call for you to make a caramel sauce, but you don't end up using it all in the recipe. So, an advantage to this stuff, you don't have any leftover excess caramel sauce. So that would be one pro, but I guess that could also be one con, depending on the person that you are. Anyhow, I don't have any cakes to make with this stuff, so I'm probably just gonna add some eggs, flour, baking powder, make it into cookies. But until next time.